Hey guys, welcome into another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. Got a fun episode today for you. We are so close to free agency. I can just smell the news that is coming next week. We're recording this as of Wednesday night, which means we are under a week from the start of official free agency when teams can start signing players. So coming quick here. Before we get started tonight, got to introduce my guys, Alex and Tyler. Alex, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. I don't know if there's been any news today. I guess there's been a lot of franchise tags and stuff, but keep plowing forward into the offseason. And I every time I mention tight ends, someone brings up Kyle Pitts. So
Oh man, that's an interesting conversation that is pointless because he's not going to be available at 13. Tyler, how are you doing today, dude?
I'm doing very well. I just got out of presenting to some faculty members and students at Cal State Fullerton. About 100 of them went well and answered some questions. And yeah, it was great to talk to the next generation of BSER scholars. And Jose, if you're listening, thanks for coming by. Nice talking to you. Bolt up.
Nice, man. You met a fellow Chargers fan there?
Yeah, he's been messaging me a little bit on Twitter just to kind of talk about the program. And then I got the chance to talk to him while we were there.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Yeah, I'm good as well. Happy to be here. We got a little bit of snow here in Fresno, California, which is the first time that I've seen anything close to snow in the past 3 years since I've lived here, but doing well. So today, I think we have to start with the salary cap being finalized, right? You know, the NFL did send a memo out. It is going to be $182.5 million for all the teams. And in response, there were a lot of cuts today, a lot of franchise tag deadlines done over the past couple of days as well. I think the big two names that we wanted to talk about in terms of releases are the New York Giants releasing offensive lineman Kevin Zeitler and the Minnesota Vikings releasing Riley Reif. We were just talking about Riley Reif as well. And Alex and I both actually wrote articles about the Chargers potentially pursuing him last year. So Alex, what do you think about the Chargers potentially pursuing him again this year now that he's a free agent?
Well, I'm not going to be writing an article this year because last time I wrote an article, he returned to the Vikings within 30 minutes. So maybe I'll pass on that. I think he's a really good tackle. I mean, I know the age might be concerning for people. He's 32, but he's been playing like the best football of his career the last 3 or 4 years with the Vikings. And I think he would be a solid option if you want to replace Tevy. Probably pretty affordable too, right? I think you'd be able to get him on one of those 1-year type deals. I mean, the last couple of years, he's kind of been playing on some 1-year deals anyway. So I think you could get him for, I don't know, 8-9 million maybe, but not that expensive compared to what people might think. I don't know what they want to do with Tevy, but I think if you bring Riley Reif in, you can have him for a year. Maybe you sign him to a 2-year deal. And you can still grab a tackle in the draft, right? Nothing's really preventing you from doing that. So I think he's an option that's an upgrade and also, is not someone that you have to plan around per se.
I kind of think if you're paying someone 8 to 9 million, that is an obstacle to taking someone in. Well, not an obstacle to taking a tackle in the draft, but certainly not at 13. And if I'm going to stick to my guns, I'm going to stick to my guns. Like, I'm sick of Band-Aids and I want someone at 13 that's going to play tackle. If they happen to play guard, I guess fine. Do you want to go into the draft having left tackle completely barren? Probably not. So I could see them bringing back Tevy as a swing kind of guy, but he's an upgrade, sure. But I'm sick of anything that isn't a first round offensive lineman and offensive tackle at this point. They're in a good spot. They need one. It's a great money kind of situation for them to draft someone at 13. So yeah, I'm just sticking to that. I don't care who's being released at left tackle. Draft someone at left tackle. The interior guy is a different conversation.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. Although, my guy right now that I'm leaning towards the Chargers drafting is Elijah Vera Tucker, and I would certainly understand them drafting him and starting him at guard. And it seems like the Vikings are kind of doing this with Ezra Cleveland, but they drafted Ezra Cleveland and they played him at guard this year, and it seems like now that they're going to kick him out to left tackle, which is where he played at college. So they could do something similar to that with Elijah Vera Tucker. Although, there is some kind of, precedence for drafting somebody, playing him at guard and only sticking him at guard. And that's where you take him. So the other thing here too is, Rashawn Slater had a hell of a day at his pro day, man. And so he ran a 4.9, put up 33 reps on the bench press, looked amazing in pass blocking drills and stuff like that. So I personally don't think that he's going to be on the board at 13, but there's obviously some quarterback situations that need to be panned out, and it is possible that he's there. So I'm not going to say no to Elijah Vera Tucker playing guard, and you get a Riley Reif or a Kelvin Beachum at left tackle, if it means that Elijah Vera Tucker is the pick, and then you're getting a future Pro Bowl All Pro guard. But I tend to agree. I do want somebody to play left tackle that they draft at 13.
Right. I mean, I totally agree with that perception. The only thing I would say is in this market where if you might be able to get a guy on a 1-year deal, right, that might not put like all the pressure in the world on whoever you take at 13 or an offensive lineman, maybe in the second round, to start like from day one. Right. And I think that that's something that could be helpful, at least in terms of development and whatever the program is for Frank Smith and Brandon Staley, and however they want, or however fast or however slow they want to bring a guy on. So that's the only reason that I think that someone like Riley Reif or any of these other tackles that'll be available that aren't top tier could be helpful.
I'm sure there are some good tackles out there who could fill in. Reef or anyone, is there someone significant that has played both left and right that could switch to either side? With the guy that you're signing to be a backup kind of swing sort of guy that's not heavy.
Yeah, that could do swing. I think Kelvin Beachum, he's taken snaps at both sides.
Okay.
Let me look at. I think Reif has just been a left tackle.
Storm Norton has taken snaps on both sides.
So is Trey Pipkins, right?
The other one though here, I think that deserves mention. I think I mentioned him last time, is Matt Filer from Pittsburgh. Because he's played left guard, right guard, and right tackle. So, presumably he would be able to play left tackle in a pinch. And then the other one really that is coming out of retirement is Kyle Long. Kyle Long has played right tackle and right guard and left guard. It's been a while since he's played his best football. I think his best football was last time he was like fully healthy and dominant was 2015 or 16. Just hasn't been a very healthy player, but he apparently is in great shape, took a year off and supposedly is healthy. There's a lot of injury risk there, but I've said from the beginning, like they're probably going to have to get a cheap starter along the offensive line. Might as well be somebody who has been one of the best guards in the league. If he's the cheap starter, I think that's okay. But, kind of depends on the rest of the market there.
2015.
He was really freaking good though in 2015,
okay. Man. So was, I don't know, somebody else. Somebody else that was good that year.
Hey, just bringing it up because he's familiar with with some of the coaches' staff. Jay Rogers was in Chicago at the same time, so
all right.
But I do think the other things to bring up here is the New York Giants releasing Kevin Zeitler. So there are a lot of good interior offensive line options. Obviously, you have Corey Linsley and Joe Thuney, who I think are going to be the market setters. I think those two will be the expensive ones. But then you've got Gabe Jackson and John Feliciano and Denzel Good and all these guys, Larry Warford coming back after opting out. So the Chargers are going to have options if they want to pursue them. Like that's just the thing, is like, who are they going to pursue? Nick Eason is another one that I talked about in my video last week. But the interior offensive line class to me in terms of free agents is much more appealing to me than the left tackle or right tackle group.
Yeah, I mean, you're also spending, I think, more money on those guys, right, in the interior. Yeah. But there are also some good depth options. It really just depends, which free agents do they want to bring on, and then which, guys from last year do they want to bring back, and what do they want to do in the draft. And I think they'll find some combination of all three. I mean, I know some of us want, the whole nuclear option where you just blow it up entirely and move on. I think all three of us are in agreement on that. But it's not going to surprise me if they bring one of Tevy, Feeney, or Lamb back and roll with that, unfortunately.
I think it is going to be the nuclear option. Just we're going to have Dan Feeney in the fridge, and when he gets nuked, he'll survive and say hi to the Gophers. Sorry, that's a bad movie. Move on.
No, if Dan Feeney is back, it wouldn't surprise me, right? Because, he does have that guard center flexibility. He's never missed a game to my knowledge. And he's got a great relationship with Justin Herbert. So if there is the one that I see them keeping, it's probably Dan Feeney. Although, there could be an argument, we're talking about Kelvin Beachum and Riley Reif. Sam Tevy is probably in that same kind of tier as Kelvin Beachum. I would say Reif is probably a tier above and would be an upgrade. But, if you're going to choose between Sam Tevi and Kelvin Beachum as like a swing tackle, I think it's kind of the same. It's just one is older and more experienced, and one is, how old is Tevi now? 26?
I think so.
So it just kind of depends on what they want to do. And, I'm not going to say no to signing a Kelvin Beachum if it means him being a depth tackle, right? Because, we saw what happened last year with Trey Pipkins and Storm Norton. It was not pretty. And the year before that with Trent Scott and Trey Pipkins. Like, they have never really had a very dependable swing tackle, which I've never understood why. It's always been veteran guys and then developmental projects. And, when those developmental projects get in the game, it's just not pretty. So getting a guy like Kelvin Beachum or Riley Reiff, if they're the swing tackles, that makes a ton of sense to me, because they're dependable veterans who could come in, start in due to injury and play really well. And so I think it's an underrated priority for Tom Telesco, but we're probably going to see Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins be the backups again next year.
Lovely. I mean, they've had a backup. I think the last backup I can remember, I don't know if he played both sides, but I think the intention was him to be a swing tackle. I think it was Chris Hairston. I think he was the best backup swing kind of guy that they had, and he had to play, and it was great. So I don't know why they haven't explored that. I guess they like their own guys, and that's fine, but it's time.
It is well past time, man. And so, like, that's the thing. Like, they've got to do some upgrades, and so they have not officially cut Trey Turner yet. Last we heard, I think that was on Sunday, right? It was Friday. It was Friday when Trey Turner, the news came that they were trying to trade him or potentially cutting him. So that has not happened yet. The market right now is kind of oversaturated with interior offensive linemen. So, they don't have to do it like right away. I would assume that it would happen before the official new start of the league year, which is next Wednesday. But it seems like Tom Telesco is taking his very sweet time right now.
Why?
Tom Telesco's still holding out for that first round pick for Trey Turner.
I don't know. Like, no one's going to trade for him. So just, cut him. If no one's going to trade for Kevin Zeitler, and Zeitler's been a really, really freaking good player and healthy, and was the best offensive player on the Giants, arguably last season, then no one's going to trade for Trey Turner, man. So just get it done with.
I mean, didn't the Patriots just get like a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick swap for Trent Brown? Yeah. So if that's the value for someone who's like been really good, but and had some COVID and injury issues last year, what's the value for Trey Turner? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Tom Telesco takes his time, and he also, never reveals what he's doing. So that those two things, it's just like we might get 3 cuts tomorrow. We might wait till Tuesday. I think last year, I want to say he waited till like Friday the week before free agency when he did Davis and Mebane. I don't remember the exact days, but it was right before free agency started. So I imagine we're in for the same situation again.
We'll know when we know.
Yeah, we will. And so we're going to do, whenever the Chargers have signing some free agents or anything like that, we will be doing some live shows in the coming weeks to break things down for you guys. So make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, have those notifications on, and obviously pay attention to Twitter, because we are going to do some social media things. So with the cap officially being set, I did tweet this out, but I wanted to cover it here. Let me pull it up. So they have $26.6 million per over the cap. Like we did in our one episode. It's a little different with Spot Track, but people seem to trust over the cap more. I honestly don't know. So they have 26.6. If they cut Trey Turner, that takes them to 38.1. And then cutting Casey Hayward takes them to 47.9 if they do that with Trey Turner. The other options obviously are Linval Joseph and Chris Harris. But again, those two have higher dead cap hits. And I think, there's a higher chance that those two are on the team. But if they do elect to cut Linval Joseph and Chris Harris, that would take them from 26 to 42.06. And then obviously if they decide to cut 2 or 3 or 4 of them, then that would free up a really big chunk of change for the Chargers. But it just makes too much sense to cut Trey Turner, in my opinion, and Casey Hayward, and be able to get close to $50 million in cap space.
Yeah. Also something that's important to mention, I think it's the same on both Over the Cap and Spot Track, is that rollover cap number from last year, because I believe they had $8 million that was unused. So that money will add to whatever their current cap is. So it's 30 on spot track, 26 on over the cap. So if you do the math, it's like 34 or 38 basically is kind of where they are with that rollover cap. So it's not quite that flat 30 million-ish number.
They're in a good spot. Assuming Turner is actually released, they can get 3 guys like Hill, Johnson, Lindsley for 30 million, just like they did last season with Balaga, Harris, and Joseph. And I'm all for that. Per year. It's important to point that out.
So obviously, when I tweeted this out, everybody was like, well, how are they replacing Casey Hayward? And I get it, man. I love Casey Hayward. I was this close to, buying his jersey last year and ultimately ended up going with Austin Eckler. So I understand it. He's been a fantastic player for the Chargers, one of the best cornerbacks in the league over the last few years. But especially with the cornerbacks, it makes too much sense to cut them early than wait a year and see if he is just as bad as he was last year or if he was injured. The risk really isn't worth it. You got to cut him now, in my opinion, and get ahead of it. So in terms of replacing Casey Hayward, Tyler, we'll start with you here. What do you think is the best option? Are you interested in a veteran free agent, or is your primary focus on the draft if they do cut Casey Hayward?
A combination of guys that they can sign that are multi-purpose sort of corners. You can take your Troy Hill and even John Johnson. I'm not saying these are outside corners, but you can move this secondary around to do what you want. Yeah. But overall, I'm looking at the Chargers' not most recent visit, but the most notable visit, and that being Asante Samuel. I think that would fit. I do think the Chargers are going to take that day 2 corner. I don't know when, but they look at both Trill Williams and not Casey Hayward. I'm losing it. Asante Samuel.
There you go.
Thank you. And I just think that's the route they're going to go. So while it would be cool to have this secondary be, not Rams West, Rams, where are they? Where's the stadium?
Rams South.
Yeah. Rams South. I'm cool with that, but I could absolutely see them exploring it in the draft, but not at 13.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I get why people are hesitant to cut Casey Hayward just because, he's been the CP1 for, 5 or 6 years now. Right. And, you don't want to cut him, I guess, but I just think the salary that they could save, you could save $9 million. And even if you didn't want to go through the draft, you can spend on a corner in free agency and probably get someone on a 1-year deal, right? Or maybe a short term, maybe a slightly long term, but like William Jackson is probably going to cost you less than that $9 million you save by cutting Casey Hayward. There are other free agent corners that aren't like, Patrick Peterson, where it's just like, oh, we're, cutting an old guy and then signing an old guy. I think there's routes they can go there. My main concern with Casey is just like, I know people talk about the hamstring injury last year, but he had some pretty ugly games like before that hamstring injury, right? Week 1 versus Cincinnati was a rough one. Then the Tampa game where Mike Evans made him look silly. His tackling,
silly and on one leg. Mike Evans was not healthy that day either.
Yeah. His tackling grade on PFF was actually really low compared to what it normally is. Just looking at the numbers a little bit right now. I get the hesitance about it, and the draft question and how they replace him is definitely there. But the fact that you could save $9 million and go grab a free agent, or you can go grab someone in the 2nd or 3rd round and start to develop them, or do both, really, because free agents aren't going to cost you, or the draft players that you get at corner aren't going to cost you that much money. I just think that it's probably time to replace Casey Hayward now before it's too late. The alternative is you keep Casey Hayward and then cut Chris Harris, right? That's also a possibility based on what his salary is. But to me, Chris Harris's advantage is that he can more comfortably play in the slot. And I think he could probably, slide in an outside corner whenever he needs to. And he was injured last year, but I just think his role is a little bit more well-defined, I guess, versus like Casey is just, do you really just want to throw him out at CB1 next year or I guess CB2 after Mike Davis? And, I just don't see how you could do that after the year he had. I know they might be banking on it was an injury, but he had a bad stretch of games before that injury against Denver. So I think it's just better to cut him now before it's too late, I guess.
I mean, the one thing that could change this specifically towards Casey Hayward is if Michael Davis is not on the team, right? So
yeah,
in that situation, then obviously you have to keep Casey Hayward. But the one thing that I keep trying to bring up with people is that if you watch the Rams on tape last year, their corners and their safeties all moved around. Troy Hill has, if you look at his profile on Pro Football Focus, he's got reps at safety, he's got reps at free safety, he's got reps at outside corner, he's got reps at slot corner. If you look at Darius Williams, it's the same thing. If you look at John Johnson, it's the same thing. And so you're really like the whole defining someone by outside corner and slot corner with Brandon Staley, it's not really that big of an issue. And it's the same kind of thing, like the kind of players that they're interested in, right? Trill Williams and Asante Samuel, both are guys who can take slot and outside reps. And so, that's the thing for me is like, you don't really need a defined outside corner. You can take one, obviously, if you have Michael Davis, but you don't need a traditional outside corner opposite him because you can put Chris Harris out there on occasion. You can put, if you sign Troy Hill, who apparently is super cheap according to Spot Track, only 2 years, $12 million is his market value. And then you could draft an Asante Samuel Jr., mix him around. You can draft a Trill Williams. You could draft an Eric Stokes or a Tyson Campbell, although I will say Tyson Campbell is much more of a project than the other guys in that kind of range. But, I've kind of felt like as much as I would like to see them double down on offensive line in the first 2 rounds, I've kind of felt like they're going to get Staley a defensive starter, a defensive contributor in one of the first 2 rounds. And I think it's obviously more likely that in the second round from just kind of how the board plays out. They could certainly take a JC Horn if they want at 13. That would definitely make Brandon Staley pretty happy, I would imagine. But, I've just kind of felt like all along that the second round is going to be, a defensive starter. And so in this case, that is like, the primary scenario for replacing Casey Hayward is taking a cornerback at pick number 47.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Tom Telesco has, I don't know if these are the best examples, but like he moved on from Desmond King a little bit earlier than his contract was up. So I think he's at least shown that he can do that. And right now, like during the season, did you want a slot guy, especially when Harris got hurt? Sure. But now looking back, like it was the right decision, I think, to move on. Slightly not as great example is that they did move on from Eric Weddle. Arguably, he had a much better season than when they not released him, but didn't re-sign him or whatever it was. They've never really filled that spot. So, but either way, I do think Tom Telesco kind of knows when to let some guys go. The only issue is that while he does know how to let some guys go, he also knows how to hang on to some guys for way too long, whether it be your Brandon Mebane or other example I can't think of. But yeah, I'm with you. I think another defensive starter is going to be taken in the second round. And why not Samuel? One of these corners, there are a lot of corners that are going to be there with that second pick. I think they've been, unless the draft goes crazy and something unexpected happens. But you could see Stokes sitting right there. You could see Samuel sitting right there. Joseph or Newsom, whoever these guys are, someone's going to be there in that second round. And I just don't think that's hard to pass up.
And you mentioned like the fact that this defense is going to have guys that move around and play outside of their traditional roles. And I just don't see Casey Hayward being that, especially at his age with his injuries last year, that he's going to move all around the field and do all that. So it may make sense for both parties just to cut him. And then, he tests his free agent market and finds a place where he can play traditional outside corner, because that's what Casey Hayward does at this point in his career. So that's why I just don't, with this new system, I don't think it makes sense. If they were running it back with Anthony Lynn and Gus Bradley or someone like that, it would be different. But I just don't think he fits this kind of secondary scheme from what we've seen from the Rams, at least.
Yeah, the other cornerback in the draft that I wanted to talk about here is Elijah Molden, the corner from Washington, because I think, he's not somebody that I would put on the outside a lot, but he did do it on occasion at Washington, and he's just a gamer, man. He takes reps at safety, at slot corner, and he finds the ball, and I think that kind of player could make a lot of sense. Asante Samuel is the same kind of way. A lot of ball production, really, smooth athlete, fierce competitor. I think that would make a lot of sense. And then if they want to do it later on in the draft, then, I think there's obviously some projects down the road. I've talked about some of them. Cameron Bynum from Cal is like my favorite day 3 corner right now because he just does so much. And I've talked about Thomas Graham before from Oregon, Rodarius Williams, Elijah Griffin from USC, Keith Taylor, Ambry Thomas. Like they have options. Mm-hmm. I've said this before, but I think the cornerback class and the quote unquote drop off after the big 3, big 4, I think it's really just an overplayed narrative. I like this cornerback class a lot. And I think they could have some really good options in the second round or in the third round too.
Cameron Bynum's a really interesting option. I was only able to watch a couple of games of his, and I certainly didn't know about him until you put some of those plays on Twitter. But he's a really kind of interesting player. Obviously, you have him as a day 3 pick. I think that makes sense. Like that's where I'd probably take him too. But if you can get a player like him, and if you watch him, maybe not the greatest in coverage, but there's some things that he does you just can't. That finding that on day 3 is incredible. So yeah, you're right. I think this class is pretty good. And if that's the route they want to go, I'm all for it. He's a guy you can move everywhere. I think that this has been the theme of the offseason on defense. Can you do more than one thing? Can you do more than one thing for us? Or at least can you do one thing well and then something else, decent enough where we can move you there? So that really has me thinking about some of the different guys. So yeah, Bynum, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I think Bynum is an interesting guy. And there's plenty of guys that I think have that sort of day 3 potential. The only thing is, like, if you're going to cut Casey Hayward, I don't think you could just grab a day 3 guy and then be like, oh, he's our outside corner, right?
Yeah.
In that situation, you'd probably have to sign a corner to a 1-year deal or something like that, and have whoever it is, if it is Bynum, develop in that meantime.
I like how you say that Telesco won't take a day 3 whatever corner and make him a starter, but all he's done is take day 3
undrafted free agents, man,
and make them starters. Like, good luck, Miles. Good luck, buddy.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. And I will say the last thing, kind of wrapping this conversation up, the Chargers coaching staff has talked about Chris Harris at every single turn. Like literally every time that they're talking about the defenses, I was like, well, Chris Harris. I haven't heard Casey Hayward's name from the coaching staff I don't think I've heard any of the coaches talk about Casey Hayward. So I'm not saying like that's how they're going to sit, like that's how they're doing business, but it just, if Chris Harris isn't on this team next season, I'd be pretty shocked, honestly.
Yeah. I think there's definitely financial implications to get from him, but if you're cutting Casey Hayward, then like you kind of have to keep Chris Harris because you can't just walk into this room with just Michael Davis and 2 rookies, or Michael Davis and a rookie and a free agent. Like, I think that just would be concerning. So it would be good to have someone who at least was here last year and kind of knows, even though it's a new system, knows how to play with some of these guys.
I'm not saying that Chris Harris is a bum by any means, but if Staley keeps Harris around, let's say he prioritizes Harris over Hayward, and I could see why. Are we concerned that he's a guy who's going to hang on to his guys a little bit too much? Like, is this actually the right move for the Chargers? Like, we think it's going to happen. Staley would probably make it work, and I think it could work. But is this the right move? And then should we be concerned moving forward? Because I'm keeping Harris. Why? Because I know him more. Like, is that it makes sense for like Johnson, Hill, Floyd to come over, but does that make sense for Harris?
I mean, Harris only has 1 year left on that 2 year he signed, right? So, I mean, I don't know if he'll be around too much longer, right? And it's always just going to be based on really what he has left in the tank, right? If Harris has another year where he's injured, or, I don't think Staley and Telesco are going to be running to re-sign him necessarily. So, I think I think the real advantage with Harris over Hayward is just that more recently he's played both slot and outside corner, right? And I think that is a little bit, even though he's older, that still is that Staley versatility he wants.
Yeah, I've said this a couple of times, but Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco and everybody they've talked about, don't think too much into like the 3-4-4-3 kind of thing. But the secondary is going to look very different because the secondary concepts are very different. They're shifting from a cover 3 to, having a 2 high safety kind of system where they move players around all the time. And so the secondary is the focus in terms of getting guys that fit what Brandon Staley has for his vision. And so could Casey Hayward and Chris Harris fit in that vision and be around here for the next couple of years? Like, sure. But it just seems more likely that they go out and get, a Troy Hill or a similar kind of free agent corner. Maybe John Johnson, that would be amazing. I think Tyler and I are both, on favor on that. And then you draft a guy. And so it would have been really nice if they had been proactive about the secondary and drafted a cornerback in the last couple of years. But, Tom Telesco has to kind of make this bed and figure out a way to, make over this secondary on the fly, because, they're changing schemes and the depth isn't all that great and the starters are not all that great either. So it's very different this year.
It was very important in the draft last year. We had to take Joshua Kelly over Troy Pride. It was not debatable.
Oh man, we'll never get over that one, but it's okay. Joshua Kelly, I think he's got a great smile. I can't. And so obviously the other big news from this week has been that the Chargers are not going to franchise tag Hunter Henry. I've kind of felt like all along that a long-term deal is going to get worked out. But it does feel like the option of him leaving is more likely now than it was a few weeks ago. So we're going to talk, obviously we've talked about why they should re-sign him. Just quickly, Alex, do you feel like it's likely that Hunter Henry is signing elsewhere? And then we'll talk about how to replace him after that.
I don't know if I would say it's likely. I'd say it's likelier, like you said, than it was 3 weeks ago or like a month ago. I just feel like there's going to be more interest from other teams. And, if there's going to be a team like Jacksonville that can go, hey, our quarterback's going to be Trevor Lawrence and we have Urban Meyer and here's $14 million per year or something and like that.
Taxes.
Yeah. And no state taxes in Florida, compared to California. So, in that case, I think that, maybe he would go there, or, he obviously loves Bill Belichick, but what's the Patriots quarterback situation, right? That's been, no one knows really what they're going to do at quarterback yet. I think that the options that we were talking about like a month ago, like I keep saying, we were trying to talk ourselves into Gerald Everett and all those guys, but now it's like, okay, you have Zach Ertz who's going to get cut. You have Kyle Rudolph who already got cut. You have Jonnu Smith who's going to be available, right? Like suddenly I think the free agent market, if you want to go in that direction, looks a lot better if you want to replace Hunter Henry. And those guys are probably going to be relatively cheaper than Hunter Henry. So that's a way to go. I don't know. I would put it at like 60-40 that he resigns with the Chargers, probably. Relatively good chance. And I don't think it'll be hard for them to reach a number. I do think he ultimately wants to stay. But if there's some team that overpays him, like I said on Twitter, it's just like, I don't think Hunter Henry has shown you enough in the time that he's been here to the point where I'm comfortable paying him 13-14 million, when you're already paying Mike Williams 15 and you're paying Keenan 20. I just don't know if he's quite versatile enough in that way.
Tyler, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. I could absolutely see why they would go elsewhere if he's demanding. If for some reason Hunter Henry is chasing the money and he wants $14 million a year, then sure, like goodbye. It's nice. Like we really want you here, but I don't know. I kind of feel like I have an 80% chance that Hunter Henry returns. I'm pretty confident that he is going to return, even if it costs him a little bit more. I just think, I can't strip the coaching staff away from Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has no relationship with any skill position player except for Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry. And sure, Austin Eckler's a better player than Hunter Henry, but they don't really have like a on-field relationship just yet.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that relationship with Mike Williams. He doesn't have a relationship with his entire coaching staff, or probably the entire offensive line that's going to be in front of him this season. So to strip him of Hunter Henry in an important part of his career, especially when Mike Williams is going to be gone anyway, I think that would be a really bad move by the organization. Now, can they replace him and give him a guy moving forward that's just going to be his tight end for more than, the next couple of years? Sure, maybe. But I don't know. I can't see, other than Henry just demanding so much money or just not wanting to return. If he doesn't want to be back, he doesn't want to be back. But I don't envision him moving on, even with cheaper options out there, even with Ertz there, even with Smith there. I just think that would not be in Herbert's best interest, more than just a tight end. I don't know. I think 80% chance he returns, even with all this news. Him not being tagged is no surprise. So a lot of fans panic and be like, "Oh, he's not tagged. He's not returning."
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. This is never going to happen. So I'm not really concerned there. So, if any team can overpay, well, not any team, because Jacksonville will definitely overpay, and they can't overpay more than the Chargers. But like, I think the Chargers can afford it. If it's 12 million, if it's 13, I actually think they might do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm kind of in between there in terms of him leaving, but I do think he's going to come back. And it was really funny, like reading, articles of like potential landing spots for him. And it was obviously, Jacksonville, New England, Buffalo was one that was mentioned. Arizona was one that was mentioned. New York, because they have so much cap space. And the reasoning was always the same. It was like, you get a very dependable, consistent tight end for your young quarterback. And it's like, well, gee, like the Chargers kind of need that too. And so, to me, it just doesn't make sense, like Tyler was saying, to let him walk. I think it makes more sense, barring Jacksonville offering him $14 million. And I know, Urban has the money to spend, but is that kind of like his big free agent signing? Like it could be, I guess. But, it just seems like in a rebuilding roster, they would kind of want to, build up other areas of the roster. So I don't know, man. Like I said, I do think it's a little more likely now. I still think that he does get a long-term deal done, but it also depends what this coaching staff wants to do with the tight end position. If they don't place the same kind of value on it as Anthony Lynn and Shane Steichen and Ken Wisenhunt did, and Hunter Henry is getting better offers, then he won't be around. But I just think you're not going to get a more well-rounded and consistent tight end on the market, because if you're taking Zach Ertz or Kyle Rudolph, they're older and they're both lousy run blockers and pass blockers. And if you're getting Gerald Everett, Johnny Smith, Jared Cook, they're probably a little more athletic, but again, they're miserable run blockers and stuff like that. So if your goal is to keep a well-rounded tight end option on the team, then you got to re-sign Hunter Henry. If not, then you can look elsewhere, I guess.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is just like, I don't know if it's just, he said in that interview, it's not just going to be money for him. It's other things, right?
Yeah.
The possibility of working with Bill Belichick, right? We talk about how that quarterback situation's up in the air, but, Hunter Henry's going to be going, if he does resign with the Chargers, is going to be going into his third coaching staff here since he's been here. And Bill Belichick has been in the Patriots for, almost longer than I've been alive. So Jeez. It's stuff like that where it's just like, does he want something like that? And obviously Bill Belichick has been in love with him since he was playing Pee Wee League football or something, right? I think there's been just things like that where it's like, it's not all going to come down to, does he like Justin Herbert or some other option, or does he like, having 12 million or 13, right? I don't think it's all going to come down to that. It's just going to be what's his best situation and stuff like that. I think they obviously want to try to re-sign him. And like I said, my preference would be going with Hunter Henry over Zach Ertz or any of those other options for sure. Do I think there's a dramatic difference between those guys? I don't know about that. But personally, I definitely think the preference should be re-signing him.
Well, I think he could go for the stability of a franchise like the Patriots. I think, if it's for a quarterback, sure, you would rather go to the Patriots than probably the Chargers, honestly. Well, I don't know. Like, the Patriots are a more stable organization. You're probably going to keep that staff together generally for a while.
Just not the quarterback.
Just not the quarterback. But Henry will have stability with Herbert, and I think that's kind of your best case scenario. Like, yeah, he had two different coaching staffs, but he had Rivers. And, now he's going to have Herbert moving forward. So I think that's enough for him. And that's a great way to get a second contract anyway. Like, you're pretty much guaranteed that this quarterback is going to target you all the time. And so you're not second contract, your third contract. I think you're more guaranteed to get one. The other thing I want to remind fans of is that Donald Parham had 10 catches, guys. Please stop saying he's a like actual. I get it. Is there a 2022 chance for him? Maybe. Is there a chance that he has actually a 30 catch season? Sure. Guys, he had 10 catches, right? And Steven Anderson had a blocked punt and a blocked field goal. No, I don't want that either. So I stop bringing up those options. I'd honestly rather take Brevin Jordan in the second than rely on Parham and Anderson.
Yeah, that's the thing about replacing him, right? That we were going to talk about too is, Donald Parham is not a tight end one. I saw a bunch of, fantasy football analysts were like Donald Parham season. And it's like, okay, guys, like he's a great developmental tight end to have, very similar to like a Ladarius Green, but he's not a tight end one. He's not there as a blocker, and he's not there just in general as a football player. Yeah. And sure, like 100%, he probably will have more than 10 catches next year. But I'm not ready to do that, making this unquestioned tight end one, unless you're getting, an upgrade at wide receiver 3, like big enough to, kind of take the vacated targets. But, for me, like the best approach in replacing Hunter Henry is very similar to what we were just talking about with the cornerback class, is that you sign a cheap veteran, Kyle Rudolph or Jared Cook. I know some people weren't super thrilled about that, but you take a 1-2 year deal on one of those guys, and then you draft somebody, in the 3rd or 4th rounds. Tommy Tremble makes a lot of sense, or a Kenny Yeboah, somebody that has right now at least a well-rounded skill set and that has potential. So like in theory, you take Tommy Tremble and there's your blocking tight end. And then you have Donald Parham and there's your developmental guy. And then you have Kyle Rudolph or Jared Cook as the veteran guy who gives you, 500 yards next season. And then you kind of go forward with that group in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can basically, if you keep Hunter Henry here, right, then what are Parham and Anderson going to do? I don't know. Like Virgil Green's probably not going to be back, so you probably promote them to tight end 2 and tight end 3, right, in whatever order you want to put them in, or maybe they draft a tight end and sort of bring in another guy in there. But I think you just kind of do it that way, right? If you go for another tight end after, say, passing on Hunter Henry, then, you also can just give those same guys a promotion, right? And I don't think a promotion to tight end 2 or tight end 3 is insignificant because, I mean, it's more snaps. You're getting more experience in that offense. And I just think you get, right, if he goes from a 10 catch to a 30 catch season, like, or something like that as a tight end 2, that would be huge. So, I definitely see why fans like Donald Parham and Steven Anderson a lot, but also, I don't think there's really a route, barring Hunter Henry getting injured again, to them playing tight end 1 next year.
Yeah, no, like Donald Parham, I think, like I said, a really good developmental option, but he's not ready for that kind of role. He was in the XFL last season, for God's sake. Like I'm like, I'm not trying to diss on the XFL, but like he was there. Like, same with Storm Norton. They're not ready. They need more time to develop. And so the other thing that Tyler mentioned here is, do you take one in the 2nd round? Because, in terms of like coming in and being starters, there's 3 tight ends in this draft. There's obviously Kyle Pitts, who's not going to be there at 13. It's just not happening. So get that out of your heads right now. And then the 2nd round, maybe you get a Pat Freiermuth, although he's been kind of gaining some buzz recently. And then Brevin Jordan from Miami. I think Brevin Jordan, in terms of replacing a well-rounded tight end, I think Brevin Jordan is a very well-rounded tight end. He's a really good blocker, really good athlete, really good route runner. He was a 2-year captain for Miami, whatever that's worth. I know that's worth something to Tom Telesco, but for us, I don't really know how much that matters. But can you afford to do that? Like, can you afford to pass on a corner, an edge rusher, a second offensive lineman to take that tight end? I don't know if you can. And so, the thing about losing Hunter Henry is that you free up, theoretically $10-11 million to spend elsewhere. But then again, if you want to draft tight end, you got to do it in the 2nd round to get a true starter. So it's where are you willing to sacrifice? And I think, to me, it's easier to sacrifice and build through a developmental tight end and a cheap veteran at tight end than it is, an edge rusher or a cornerback.
All right. So how about this? Let's take Elijah Vera Tucker at 13 and Jordan at 47 and use the money for Henry to sign Hill and Johnson, which is a little more expensive than Henry. Which one are you taking? The other option being keep Henry and don't have those 2 guys, and then take a corner at in the 2nd round.
So my option is Henry and a corner in the 2nd round, or Brevin Jordan in the 2nd round, and then Troy Hill and John Johnson.
Yeah, obviously the numbers are a little bit different, but it's like 12 versus 16. So make that work.
Alex, I'll let you go with that one first.
I I would probably keep Henry, but I don't know if I would do it by like a lot. Those are two really good options depending on what they want to do. The way that you can also kind of make those salaries work, and like the Johnson Hill example is go get a cheaper tight end, perhaps like Zach Ertz, for example. And then
any reason, Alex?
No particular reason. No, I think that there's a lot of ways you could do that. I don't know how I feel about like grabbing a tight end to go play this year. I mean, Brevin Jordan, I like Brevin a lot. And if they really want to go in that direction, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But like you said, like there's just so many needs at cornerback, at edge. There's probably like 6 or 7 needs, even if Hunter Henry were to walk, that I would probably get to before I get to tight end. Especially if they at least sign some guy on a 1-year deal or something. So I don't know. I would probably pick the option where they re-sign Henry.
That's tough because I love John Johnson, man, and I love the idea of pairing him with Derwin James. But I just think like roster wise, like they need to get, a long-term cornerback. And I think they need to do it in the second round. And so I think I would choose Henry in a second round corner. Just be like, I think Troy Hill is a very solid starter, but he's 30. And, John Johnson, I think, while he can play some in the slot and do a lot of things over the middle, I do think that they need to put a premium on replacing an outside corner, somebody that takes the majority of the snaps at outside corner, at least in the second round in the draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting thoughts for sure. I will say though, like if you're getting Zach Ertz and then you can, Zach Ertz is the one that makes it say, then you can take like a flyer on a tight end in the later rounds, because I think Zach Ertz has a good enough ball ahead of him where I'm not super worried about like the very near future in terms of like 2022 and having that guy. Cause I think Ertz can be a true starter for a tight end for probably 2 or 3 years.
Right. And, if you have Ertz and Parham, I don't know. That might be the direction I'm kind of leading in right now.
What do you think in terms of an Ertz? Like, I don't think he's going to get traded. I don't know.
No,
like,
he's gonna get cut.
Yeah, it seems like whenever a team says we're going to try and trade him, but if not, then we're going to cut him. You're going to cut him. Like, just say that.
Right.
So Alex, what do you? Yeah, I mean, you're obviously an Eagles fan. So what do you think in terms of a contract for Ertz would look like?
I don't know. I mean, you could probably sign him like a 2 or 3 year deal, 8 or 9 million per. That's kind of, I mean, it's sort of what the deal he's on already. If he had signed a contract extension with the Eagles this year or last year, he might have, got what Hunter Henry is about to get, but they couldn't agree on an extension. Then obviously he gets hurt last year and obviously has the worst starting quarterback play in the league. And, then people are looking at his numbers and not adding any context to them. So that's unfortunate, but I think you could probably get his current deal, maybe a little bit more, just based on, how much the cap has gone up since he got that last deal. So I would probably say, like, if you want to do 2 years, 18 million, 3 years, 27, somewhere around that range. I don't think that, I think that's about what Ertz would probably get.
I could live with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that helps you, right? Instead of offering 12 years, 48 for Henry or something like that, that saves you a couple million every year. Again, I'm not saying I prefer Ertz, even though I've inferred that a lot.
Are you kind of talking yourself into it though?
I sort of. I mean, I'm
Hunter Henry, so apparently you've been crowned.
Why do you hate Hunter Henry, Alex?
There could only be one of us. But I don't know. I've been talking to myself, I guess, more into Zach Ertz from the standpoint that, like, I don't know if you want to offer Hunter Henry all that money, and maybe you go with a shorter term option to build the team elsewhere. But I still prefer signing Hunter Henry just from the standpoint that, he has that familiarity with Justin Herbert and you're not throwing a new tight end in there. But, for me, the second the offer gets too big or he really says, hey, I want to go to New England and be butt buddies with Bill Belichick, then I think that's the point where, you pull the plug and you look at your other options.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see really how Hunter Henry's market does pan out, because once Zach Ertz is released, you've got Ertz, you got Rudolph, you got Johnny Smith, Gerald Everett, and Hunter Henry, obviously all atop the tight end market. And I think Mark Andrews is due for an extension here pretty quick as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he gets out there on the open market. I still kind of would think that like a 4-year, $45 million deal would seem fair for both sides. But that's just kind of my opinion. And I'm not the capologist that Ed McGuire is, so we'll have to kind of see what it is. But I think 4 for 45 sounds pretty fair to me for both sides.
Right.
Sure.
Cool. Good stuff. All right. Well, we were going to talk about how Dak Prescott's contract affects Justin Herbert's future. But I think that could be a little long conversation. We've already been going for an hour, so we'll cover that one probably next time. Tyler, Alex, any other thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
Yeah, Herbert's going to be expensive in the future. There's the hour-long talk. Done. Your homework.
Alex, any other thoughts?
Please, Adam Schefter, I'm begging you for just a crumble of news, a little morsel
of news. Tom Telesco, please watch. We're gonna release this episode tomorrow morning, and then like at 9 a.m. it's gonna be Chargers release Trey Turner. Like that's
Chargers
just our
Aaron Donald.
But yeah, like I said, we're going to be doing some live videos, live reactions to the Chargers and potential moves, obviously, over the next couple of weeks. And, next Wednesday in particular is going to be crazy because, the teams are able to start negotiating with free agents, I believe on Monday. And then Wednesday, they're able to, sign on the dotted line. So Wednesday is going to be pretty crazy. And so make sure and stay tuned for that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and set those notifications. All right, guys, that'll do it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave us a review if you please feel so inclined, and we will see you next time.